Is there a truly reality out there that humans could really know? It's an age-old battle between realists and absolutists. God is not great, how religion ruins everything. And yet it's utterly and totally ridiculous. We need to live for something beyond ourselves. A story, likely apocryphal, is told about philosopher Bertrand Russell, who, having just lectured on the orbit of the Earth around the sun, was confronted by, the proverbial little old lady in tennis shoes, who said, everyone knows that the Earth sits on the back of a giant turtle. Well, Russell, jesting, responded, what does that turtle sit on, ma'am? Without missing a beat, she said, another turtle. And then he said, well, what does that turtle sit on? And she said, another turtle. And he said, what does that turtle sit on? And she said, save your breath, sonny. It's turtles all the way down. Now, though that little old lady was the butt of the story, I think she was really onto something. If not cosmological, then at least something more with the nature of human knowledge itself. And that's what I want to look at for a few minutes. What is the meaning of when we know something? How do we know what we know? We use the word know in a lot of different ways. I know that 2 + 2 = 4. I know that I was born in New York. I know that Jesus is coming soon. Now, so we use the concept of knowledge in a lot of different ways. Now, whatever we know, knowledge in and of itself, of whatever kind we have, comes as part and parcel of a system. Our thoughts don't exist as independent entities. No, they're all part of a larger system, a larger frame of reference from which we work in order to arrive at our conclusions. Yes, regardless of the different beliefs and worldviews, we all work within a system. We interpret the world through the system. Could be a Marxist framework, could be a fundamentalist Christian framework, could be a hardcore scientific materialist framework, it could be an 18th century Sufi mystic framework. It doesn't matter. We all work within a set of parameters or rules. It's all part of the system. And in a sense, that system, whatever it is, it kind of functions as the lens. It functions as the filter, as the template through which we understand reality. Now, the system itself isn't questioned. On the contrary, the system itself provides the grist for the question. The system is, it's in a sense, the system is to the questions what grammar and logic and ink is to a sentence. And that's how we work from those themselves, of course. So everything you do, the premises you work from, the logic you employ, the parameters you are working in, they all arise from the system itself. Now, every now and then, somebody steps back and questions the system, which is fine. You should question your system. But the question you run into, upon what premises are the new questions established? You're going to ask questions, you've got to ask them based on, something else. New questions presuppose new assumptions, a new starting point and outside, a new starting point outside the old, which is fine. But upon what is that new foundation based? How can you test the system other than by going outside of it, which requires a new foundation, a new system? So again, no problem. That's no problem, assuming the newest foundation is valid. But that can be questioned by only going outside of it, and on and on and on. So you have a system, you're going to question it. Okay, you question it based on new questions. But what are those new questions based on? They're based on certain presuppositions. Well, what are those presuppositions based on? Well, you got to go outside them to find the answer, and you go on and on and on. In a sense, the old lady was right. It's turtles all the way down. Yet we have to stop with something sooner or later, because we all have to base our beliefs on something. Wittgenstein. How many of you know the name Ludwig Wittgenstein? It's funny, he was a Jew, he was Jewish, gay, leftist intellectual who lived during the time of the Nazis. He had to get out of there. No wonder he left the continent and went to England. And Wittgenstein said years ago, listen to this is very important. He says, of course, there is justification for belief, but justification comes to an end. And that end always arrives before we reach the ultimate foundation of everything. It's what the poet Czesław Miłosz called the lining of the world. I mean, take science, for instance, which always works within a system. It's the framework in which the questions are asked and answers are found. You've got investigation, you've got inquiry, and you've got analysis. These all occur, but they only occur within the system and up to a point. Beyond the boundaries of the system, inquiry stops, even though the presuppositions of the system are just that, presuppositions. They're truths that are accepted as givens, even though they're not proved. Because again, how can they be proved when they form the foundation upon which the questions are asked? It's almost like saying, to use an analogy, it's like, can a scale weigh itself? No, it can't, because the scale is the thing doing the weighing, so it can't weigh itself. So how do you challenge the questions with your system when the system is the thing that you get the questions from to begin with? Thus, so for many, even science, which in the 20th century has become the sacral mode of knowledge, comes with gaps between what's known and what's assumed. But you say, but doesn't Christianity do the same? Of course it does. But Christianity comes with the realization of these limits built into it. It's called faith. And as far as from being a weakness, as in science, to say in science you're taking something by faith is to admit you failed. But it's in Christianity, faith is an integral part of the system. It's almost as if you could say that God knew beforehand the limits of human inquiry, and thus he built that realization into a system of truth itself, even making it a fundamental component. What am I saying? In a sense, I'm saying that both science and Christianity are, in a sense, quote, groundless, in that both work within a framework built on unproven assumptions. They all work on things that have to be taken on, well, they have to be taken on faith. That's it. That's all you could call it. The big difference, though, is that in belief in the Bible, in Christianity, faith isn't an admission of weakness or failure. On the contrary, faith is an essential part of the package. It's an a priori acknowledgement that the foundation of knowledge can take us only so far. And then we have to step out beyond the seen or the proven. Makes me think of this one text in the Bible. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So in a sense, however different their approaches, Christianity and science are both faith ventures. They're systems that in and of themselves can't get us to the bottom turtle, even though we know somewhere out there it's got to be out there. You know, whether we're seeking truth in tiny superstring loops in 10-dimensional space or in God himself, sooner or later faith fills in where our inquiry inevitably and necessarily ends. Where does it end? Well, I guess that's, crucial, because where you end, I think, greatly impacts where you ultimately wind up. I think of this secular writer, biologist, Jacques Monod, biologist. He once wrote famously, "The ancient covenant is in pieces. Man at last knows that he is alone in the universe, unfeeling immensity, out of which he emerged only by chance. His destiny is nowhere spelled out, nor his duty. The kingdom above or the darkness below, it is for him to choose." I wonder, though, where the kingdom above exists in his world that came purely by chance. Because in the end, he needed faith as well, even though he wouldn't admit it. It's interesting, Jacques Monod, he died in leukemia in 1976. And I thought it's fascinating. His last words were, "I am trying to understand." And then he died. He tried to understand because he built a foundation on science. And science alone comes to a stop, and then everything else is on faith. And he obviously wasn't able to make a leap beyond what science could tell him. Thus, I'm trying to understand.